This is the official Wirral YouTube TV channel, and today we're talking to John Evans, author of the 2024 book Wirral Railways. The railways have shaped the Wirral. Now here we are at Upton Station, but tonight we're going to talk with video link with John about his book. So in this conversation we will talk about many videos that we've already covered. Anything mentioned will be linked in the description below, and of course a link to his book. So sit back and jump in and out if you want to, come back to it, and let's get this satellite link up and going. So we're here with Mr. John Evans, and he's the author of Wirral Railways, a very recent book that he's just written. And we're here to talk to him today about how he wrote it. So, hi, John, and welcome to the Wirral channel.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. So, how did your interest or fascination in the Wirral Railways come about?
Well, even since I was a kid, I used to go train spotting. So, railways have been part of my life the whole way through. But then I kind of met this girl from the Wirral. And we sort of decided eventually that we were probably going to stick together. So it was time to come and meet the in-laws, the outlaws. So with much trepidation, I made my way to a place called West Kirby, which I have to confess I'd never heard of, apart from knowing she lived there, and spent a weekend meeting the new in-laws, or in-laws to be. But during a pause, I just found that there was a local railway station. So I pottered down to this railway station on my own, found that the trains there were some of the oldest in the country. And all of a sudden I thought, hell, this is a railway I need to get to know. This is fascinating. Just walking onto the station platform at West Kirby and seeing that sort of castellated tower and thinking, this is something a bit special. So actually, it started a love affair with Wirral Railways, which I've had ever since, and I've been a regular traveller for 45 years now on Wirral Railways.
So, so where you're from originally, then?
I'm from Northampton, and I now live in West Yorkshire, and I have to say I hang around stations with my camera. Spend far too much time really doing things like that rather than pursuing something useful. But I have been writing quite a few books over the years. I did start my life as a journalist before going into the car industry, and I've always kept writing ever since. So I suggested to my publishers, what about a book on Wirral Railways? Because several were written in the early 80s, and they were published locally, and they were good books. They were informative, but they took the story up to about late 1970s, 1980. My book focuses basically on the last 45 years, so it takes a different approach. The railway is more modern, and we see the railway right away from 1970s, late 1970s, until 2014, 2024, in fact, when the latest trains were introduced.
So that covers the whole span of the 507s, 508s. So when you first came and you saw these trains, you said the oldest in the country. So are they the 503s? So what year would that have been roughly?
They were the 503s, and these trains were initially built when the line was electrified back in 1938 by the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. They were still in service in the early 80s, and they built some more in 1956, but some of the 1938 ones were still going. And inside them, you walk up inside, and they had those netted luggage racks, and they had individual lights, not strip lights. They had this deep moquette on the seats. And to me, they just were so evocative of a time gone by. I think at the time they were among the oldest trains in the country. And then one day we heard there were new trains coming, and they arrived, and one or two of them were standing at Birkenhead North. Some were built new for the Wirral from York. Others had spent a couple of years on the southern region. And those ones were quite interesting because when they arrived at Birkenhead North, there were things like Effingham Junction written on the front on the destination boards. Their last journey was obviously somewhere south of London, the next one in the Wirral.
Yeah, I certainly remember those trains. I remember the seats and the whole atmosphere of them, even the lights in the ceiling.
Yeah,
you know, they had that very orange glow to the lights. No, rather than the LED lighting that we'd have nowadays. They were very orange filament glow, which really enhanced, you know, going through the tunnel. But I can see a fascination, you know, coming across West Kirby Station. It has that look from the outside of that tower there, you know, the little courtyard inside and the canopied, you know, platform. It's two platforms, isn't it, with the sidings on either side. Now, at that point there, was that prior to the, I'm just trying to get my years right here, was that prior to when the leisure centre was built, or was that round about the same time that was built? Because there was the branch line platform that went off to the what's now the Wirral Way at the time. So was that after that?
Yeah. The sports centre had just been built, so I did miss seeing the old station. Obviously, that was quite fascinating that a little place like West Kirby should have two stations. But I missed the old one that once had steam trains going through to Hooton.
Yeah, well, actually, something that's coming up on the channel very soon. It may be out by the time this video comes out. But one of our other viewers has actually made a CGI simulation of the entire Hooton to West Kirby line, where he's put in all the stations, all the track beds. So there's a CGI simulation coming up on the channel pretty soon after this one. So that's where you're interested in that.
Yeah, I do look forward to seeing that, because I think there's increasing interest in what the old railway was like. Certainly when I've walked on the Wirral Way, I've often been talking to people, and you see bits of platform here and there, and of course Hadlow Road Station has been very beautifully restored. So there's quite a bit to see still, and I think there is an increasing sort of fascination in old railways anyway, prompted partly by people doing TV programs. The Wirral Way is also important because it was pioneer. It was the first time that an old railway had been completely turned over to become a leisure footpath, and it was so successful that other places elsewhere in the country have copied it. Yeah,
it was the first. Well, it was a country park. It's the whole thing's designated as a country park. Is that the first one? Yeah. And of course, the fact is, it was a railway. You know.
Yeah. I think in certain places when I've walked along it, and you can still see parts of the platform, and of course all the bridges are there, and you somehow get a feel of it. But having a simulation of it would be absolutely great, very interesting indeed, especially in West Kirby and at Hooton, where it's quite disappeared. You know, we actually took to get a picture at Hooton of where the Wirral Way joins. We took a drone along and flew it above Hooton Station.
Okay.
And from there, you can see what is now the Wirral Way curving round and joining the line from Birkenhead to Chester. Much easier to see from the air than the ground.
Have you been down there recently? When was the last time you did it, or when did you do that?
Yeah, I was there. I was there quite an awful lot while I was doing the book. I seem to be there all the while. But last year I was there in the autumn of last year, I think was might be the last time. I've been to the Wirral since then, of course, but not actually to the Wirral Way.
Well, the massive section between Hooton and up to Hadlow Road has been completely redone.
Oh,
roughly since I'm trying to think. There's another video on the channel which is on this. It was around about March. I did the video, something like that. But there's the start of it's all changed. They've got on the bridge, where you start the entrance and walk down to it. They've put the white picket fence that looks like railway fencing along there. There's a sign over the top which says Wirral Way on it, and then there's a proper path going down which has been totally relaid and widened. And it's a great sort of path all the way down to Hadlow Road. In fact, in front of Hadlow Road has been redone as well. To do it, and they've put new fencing up at Hadlow Road on it, and it continues a bit further on. I don't know how far it goes, but heads towards Neston. I don't know how far it goes, or if they plan on continuing it, or not. Or where it's going to finish, not sure. It may go all the way to Neston, I'm not sure. But yeah, it has changed down there since then. You'd have known at the time if you've seen it. But yeah, and I put some pictures in this video.
It was a bit confusing getting onto the Wirral Way at the Hooton end. So that would be absolutely brilliant because it's so easy to get on at other places. It's always a bit of a damp squib when you come off the Wirral Way to Hooton. So they've done exactly the right thing. Yeah,
so literally, if you went over the bridge from the car park end over the bridge, then you can't miss it.
Yeah,
big signage. And actually, at the other end, at West Kirby end, they've done the same sort of entrance to it. With the sign over the top.
With the Wirral Way.
Very similar entrance at the Hooton end they've done as well, so that both ends are kind of bookmark with those signs.
That's exactly the right word, Andy. A bookmark. It only needed the same thing doing at the other end, and they've done it. We can't fault it, can you?
No, that looks really good. So tell everyone who's watching as well about the book. And what's in it, and what they can expect from it. So you said already it covers from that time period. Other books have covered other time periods. So this is this would be what's known now as the Wirral line.
It covers all the current railways in the Wirral. It's all in colour. Every photograph is in colour, apart from some historic ones I got from Birkenhead Central Museum. It's got, and they've never been published before. They're all new photographs. I have quite good contacts in the photographic world, so I have people who were able to give me pictures of trains in the 1980s. There's even some steam trains in there. So although it's mainly the newest stuff, I felt it was important to take a look back to say where had all this come from. And it would have, for instance, not been sensible to produce a book about the railways of the Wirral without mentioning, for instance, the steelworks trains to Shotton Steelworks, and show pictures of Birkenhead's docks where they used to load. So there are some historic photographs, mostly from that period, but one or two older ones. I have to say that the museum were fantastically helpful. They opened up their archive for me, and it was one of those things was I could have had a whole book of just their pictures, but in the end they were black and white, and I really wanted this book to be all colour pictures. I also got some help from local railway enthusiasts who had pictures, so they've let me use those. And as I say, there are 180 colour pictures in this book, and they're basically being used for the first time. And you can basically track each line. So we start off with the first line to be built from Birkenhead down to Chester, and then we look at the line from Birkenhead to West Kirby, It seems amazing, actually, to find that when it was first built, it was completely unsuccessful, and they were just losing money hand over fist. It took some while before the thing started making money. And when you look at it now, you know, with trains every few minutes, and they're most times of the day they're really busy. But we're talking a long while ago now, when the north of the Wirral was quite remote and trains really didn't have places to go to. It was the Wirral Railways that generated new housing, new traffic, and people wanting to get to either go on holiday in the area or to go across mainly to Liverpool to work. So we've got a lot of pictures. The text tells the story of each line in a very light, easily readable way. I'm a kind of journalist, so I tend to write for a general audience. So this is not a book for deep railway enthusiasts. I think they'll find that railway enthusiasts will love the pictures, and also the sort of colour and the emotion of the railways. But I think anybody who picks up the book, hopefully if they've travelled on Wirral's trains, will find it interesting. I really hope they do. We do cover very briefly the closed lines. So for instance, the one from Hooton to West Kirby, there is a picture of the old West Kirby station when it was operating. And we really tried to do the whole thing. And then of course we cover the line from down to Wrexham, so just the part that's in the Wirral. Quite a funny thing, Andy, you know, you may have a view on this. What is the south border of the Wirral? And I started to ask people, where does the Wirral actually end? Where does the Wirral Peninsula end? And I got some people telling me, oh, this actual road is the end. Other people were saying, oh, it's very fluid. I got some books out of the library, and I never did come to a firm conclusion. I made my own mind up in the end and interpreted the whole thing fairly generously. So, for instance, the Birkenhead to Chester line, I included every station. So I included quite a few going down towards Wrexham. So where the trains headed south, I interpreted it fairly generously, because I think you need to tell the whole story. If I hadn't put Chester Station in there, it would have probably been a bit ridiculous, really. You know, you can't end a story of a railway line at a station in the middle of the countryside. So that was my decision anyway.
Well, it's a very good point. It's something that I've thought about and looked into a lot myself. Where is the end of it? And it's quite general, really, if you think about it, because, you know, peninsulas all over the world, the three sides on water is very well defined, isn't it? It's yes. Obvious. It's the fourth side, if you like. So what actually did is we reached out and we put a poll out to everyone who watched the channel, right, to try and get some clarification of what more people than others thought was that end point, a line, if you like, going across. Because there are many theories of the ones where it's, you know, it's within an arrow's throw of the walls of Chester is the border of it, and things like that. And the reason I wanted to find out is because I was trying to find the middle of the Wirral. Right. In order to find the middle, you need to know where all the edges are. There's a website you could find that you could, you know, geographically find the middle of all the points. You put points on a map, and then it geographically found the middle of all those points. So we wanted to find out where it was.
One of the interesting things about Wirral and its railways, I'm from Northampton, and the county of Northampton is 11 times bigger than Wirral.
Okay.
And Wirral has 10 times as many stations. So Wirral, actually, sometimes people bemoan the fact that we've got stations in the Wirral, but in fact, actually, Wirral has done very well. And Birkenhead is the town with the most number of stations in the country. Not city, but town. And we're not talking time stops here. We're talking of proper railway stations. It's got, I think, 7, but it did have 10 at one stage. So Birkenhead alone is an interesting place on the railway map.
Yeah.
And of course, it used to have direct trains to Paddington. And it's because that line declined. And in the early 70s, after the through trains to London had disappeared, it sort of lost its way a bit. But then came back with a vengeance. And obviously it was electrified. And once it was electrified, there was a lot of development, ribbon development either side of it, as people realised, here's an easy way for us to get to work at Liverpool. So the focus of that line originally was trying to get out of the Wirral. But in fact, I say today, the focus is getting people get home, helping people get home to the Wirral and get to work maybe either in Birkenhead, Liverpool, or even Chester. So it's changed its purpose. And I kind of like that. I like that line anyway. Each station has something interesting about it. I photographed them all for this book. There's old photographs, there's new photographs. I spent some time with the station staff at Hooton, the ticket sales office people. They were so interested, and they were telling me all sorts of interesting things. So I've tried to photograph 1 or 2 things that they talked to me about. There's unusual architecture down that line. If you get off at 1 or 2 of the stations, you can find they're exactly as they were years ago. 1 or 2 others look really quite desolate because they've had the buildings knocked down, and they've just really got poor quality bus shelters. But in the main, that line's done very well. It's proved its worth, and of course now it's got a very frequent electric service between Liverpool, Birkenhead and Chester. So there's a lot to be interested in there, and that was the first line in the Wirral. Meanwhile, the West Kirby line is also doing really well. It's got a regular service. There is a fantastic DVD available, a driver's cab view of a train going from Liverpool to West Kirby, and that's available from a company that specialises in cab views of trains, and that's interesting. And that was filmed in the days when there were still just some of the old signalling was still there. That was a big change actually, when in the early 90s, when they took away all the signal boxes and the semaphore signals and put electric signalling in. It was quite interesting because one day there used to be a place near Euston called Collector's Corner, where you just walked in, and everything from all the railways in the country was for sale: signs, bits of track, all sorts of things. So I wandered in there one day and saw in front of me the sign West Kirby from the signal box. So somehow I lugged this onto a train, took it back to my office in Milton Keynes. It weighs about a ton, and these people in the coach were looking at me as if to say, "What have you got there?" But I've always loved having it. You know, it's kind of nice artifact, because the signal box in West Kirby is now replaced by a supermarket, and I've got the sign. And one day I've said, you know, when I pass, it's going to a bunch of enthusiasts at Hadlow Road. So one day it'll be.
Oh, brilliant! I mean, a sign like that looks, you know, as you pass it, it looks like a small sign that's been stuck on a building, but it's actually quite big. Oh yeah, I see it. That's the original one. So is that the width of a room, or is that 6 foot long or something? Or
it's about 6 foot long. Yeah.
Trying to get that on the 515 from Euston is not
which I did.
Easy, is it?
Luckily, there was another standing ticket collector who looked at me and thought, he said, "I know where you've been." I said, "Yeah, corner."
Maybe he's used to it. Maybe
I think perhaps they are. But in that day, there was the sign for Mells was there, and also Hoylake. So I could have had a choice. It would have been nice to have more than one, but you know, I wanted West Kirby because obviously my family are all from West Kirby. You know, my wife's family, and that was where I used to spend a lot of my time. But one day I did
Great.
try to do every railway in the Wirral in a day. Did it easily. I probably finished by 2, started at 9, finished by 2 o'clock. But it was quite a nice day out. I really enjoyed it.
You went through every station.
I went through every station. In my book, there's a map of the Wirral's railways, and so I was able to look at everything. This map also marks the Wirral Way and all the closed stations. So it also in the book there's quite an interesting and probably quite melancholy pictures. Right at the front here, we've got the old 503 being broken up for scrap.
It's the just by Birkenhead and Central.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly where they were. And what they did was they set fire to them to get rid of all the interiors and then just cut what was left up for scrap. For the metal. And then shortly after that, luckily they kept 2 on one side. So they were used for the centenary in 1986. They restored them to their original condition. I think you can see one on the cover there in the red colour. And the photograph of the new one side by side. That was a very lucky photograph, that one was. But that was a great weekend.
I remember I was a kid, but I went on that centenary one.
You did, yeah.
Painted as the LMS train. I think we got on it at Roxbury at the time, which would have been the end of the electric part of it at that point. It must have obviously gone round the loop and come back again. That must have been the last time I went on those type of trains,
Yes, it was. I mean, they'd already been withdrawn from normal service by then. So they put these 2 on one side, one of the 502s and one of the 503s. The 503, of course, never worked on the Wirral. They were used on the line up to Southport. They didn't have the emergency door on the front for going through the Liverpool Tunnel. So this was the first time a 502 had worked on the line. So it was quite an interesting weekend. Loads of people came out and it was beautiful sunshine. They had a big display of historic locomotives and modern locomotives as well at Birkenhead North, and people were just piling on the trains and having fun. So it was very nice way of celebrating. And in Birkenhead, I think it was Hamilton Square Station, they painted murals right the way up the whole of the walls. A mural was painted and it was illustrated in the book about the history of the Wirral Railways. It was nice. Now,
of course, it's gone full circle, and those brand new trains, as on the picture on the book there, have all gone themselves.
It's interesting, Andy, because they in themselves, like the 502s, became the oldest trains working regularly on British railways. I think there was some 313 units down south that were just the same age. But 1982 to 2024, they gave pretty good value for money.
Wasn't the first one in 1977?
I think the first ones were, but the full changeover, I think, was 82, 83, somewhere around there. When there were enough of them to run all the services. You'll see them also in the book in different colours they've had over the years, starting off with blue and white, and then they had a sort of yellowy, orangey colour, then grey, and then they ended up some yellow, some grey. But as a nice thing they did at the end was to paint the original one back in its original blue and white colours, and that's now been preserved. That unit.
That's one's been preserved. Now I've met up with the secretary of that preservation society. So there are 2 videos or 2 interviews on the channel all about the 507. And those 2 were a while ago now. It was before they went out of service. But it's down in Derby now. As far as I know. It's in Derby, and I'm keeping in touch with them. I'd like to follow up on those two initial interviews. We did the second one. Rather luckily, I said to the guy, I said, I'll meet you at, he lives in Liverpool, I think, over Egbert Way. I said, I'll meet you at New Brighton, just as a place to meet up, to do the interview. And when I got there and walked on the platform, but what was there was 507001.
Oh, right.
Painted in the, British Rail colours. I'm like, have you brought this here for this? He says, no, I didn't even know it was here. And so we did the interview right in front of him. Because at that time they were still trying to get the monies together, for the society that they've set up, for the transportation costs and things like that. And then they explain in the video all the plans of the future that they've got for it as well, and what they want to do and what they think they can do. And obviously money's a factor, where it can go is a factor, but I'd love to follow up on that video and go and see the train again, wherever it may end up, on a heritage railway somewhere. Of course, being older, they're electric and third rail, and there's no heritage railways with third rail, which is one of the issues, and how are they going to power it? But that's the things that they're working on.
I think what this has always been a problem with preserving electric third rail stock, that no one has got a private line which you could run. It probably could run on the southern region, because of course the 508s came from the southern region. So although it wouldn't be near the Wirral, it might be possible for this unit to find somewhere on the southern region where occasionally it could get an outing. That would certainly be a nice thing. But they did a great job at the end of its life, painting it and making it well. It looked like new. I mean, I remember I went over.
Did you see it new? There it is.
Yeah, that's 507001, and I remember seeing it for the first time. When it first came up onto the Wirral, and thinking, wow, they look very much like the southern region trains of the day, but compared with the old ones they were replacing, gosh, it looked amazing. Wow.
Space Age. That one, of course, is the one that the Queen went on when the Queen came up. It was the exact same train. And even because he got, so they're 40 odd years old, weren't they? But about the 20-year mark, they got a big refurb, didn't they?
They did. They
had all the different seats and the different, I don't know if they had different doors and things like that. Because the seats used to be 3 and 2 at one point. There was staggered sort of corridor down in the middle of it. They just ended up with 2 and 2.
They improved the lighting. And actually, the front end, they changed the lights on the front end.
Yes, they used to have 3 lights on the front, didn't they? Is it 3?
Yeah, that's right. And then they put a sort of car headlight type shape on the front.
Yeah, that's a big.
They don't know a penny, do they? They were built at York. Those were.
Well, one thing they say about the Wirral Line trains with the 503s and the 507s is they know how to get the money's worth out of them, or the life span out of them. There's other people in the country are always shouting for new trains. Get rid of the old ones. Why haven't we been investing in new trains? It seems to be a big thing. Maybe down south. I don't know if you think that's a fair assessment, that round London ways there's more new trains more often than there is up north in general.
Oh yeah, that's undoubtedly true.
Yeah.
One place where there are brand new trains, well, of course, the Wirral's now got brand new trains. The line, the Transport for Wales service has got brand new trains down there. I don't know whether you travel on those from east and southwards.
Well, that line is about 500 yards from the back of my house.
All right.
So I know it well. And of course now they're running the XD stock tube trains on there now, which is right. Which are all battery converted by. I covered something on that a while ago. Viva Rail, I think, was the company.
Viva Rail, I think they're going into financial difficulties. I don't know whether they're still going.
I don't know, but that's roughly where that came from. And then I did a fortunate or unfortunate video about it, actually. there's lots of videos on the channel that you can, that you can see. But I took the camera on one of those trains and I went down to Harden Bridge. In fact, I think I went over to Shotton. And I was just going to come back on it, and the train was cancelled because it had broke down.
Oh dear.
This was quite when it was fairly new. It was still like a couple of weeks into its running, and eventually it turned up, and it broke down on that station it was at. It came through to Neston, and it broke down at Neston. It got to Heswall, it broke down at Heswall. This was in the first runnings of it, so it was quite unreliable. You know, it was to do obviously with electrical supply. I think the guard said it kept tripping out. Every time they stopped the train, they had to go into the electric cupboard and reset all the RCDs in the and then it carried on again. But since then, I've seen them running up and down all the time.
Yeah, and they're okay.
You know, and being in them, you know, they're an amazing conversion, you know, from the old D stock. Maybe they're still the oldest trains in the country, being old D stock. Are they 1960s D stock?
Yeah, they might well be. They might well
they've
be.
been refurbed, and you know, they've got all new kit in it. Yeah, they've got plug sockets and USBs in them, and Wi-Fi on board, and all that kind of stuff. You know, it converts electric, so they have a diesel engine and electric motors, and things like that. But maybe they're the oldest trains in the country now. I don't know.
Might well be. While I was writing the book, I thought I need to take another trip on the line down from Bidston. So I got to Bidston, and it was one of the brand new Transport for Wales trains. And I got on board, and we set off and went down, you know, down Heswall, and I'm sitting there having a pleasant day, and the ticket collector came round. She was absolutely lovely. She said, "Well, where are you going?" So I said, "Well, I think I'm going to Wrexham." She said, "What do you mean you think?" I said, "Well, to be honest with you, I'm only on the train to have a ride." "Oh," she said, "you don't want to get off at Wrexham." She said, "You want to go further? Go to Chirk." Then she said, wrote on a bit of paper. She wrote, "Go to the viaduct, go to the town, have a look at this, go walk through the canal tunnel." And I did all this stuff, but I thought, how many people on a ticket collectors on a train in that amount of time telling one person how to have a nice day out? I did everything she said.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, what a great idea! But it is a great line, isn't it? In its own right.
It is a great line.
Even the bit like it splits the peninsula in two.
Yeah.
It then veers off to the like the west coast of it, if you like. Harden Bridge literally goes over the River Dee into Shotton, and then goes through several villages that I can't pronounce off the top of my head, and ends up in Wrexham. And a relatively big station in Wrexham as well, isn't there? The Wrexham General. Wrexham General. So you changed there and got onto the line down, main line. Yeah, that's it. That goes Chester. Does it go to Shrewsbury in the end? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But I don't know if I've been to that viaduct, but I've been to the Ponty Sitcliffe viaduct, aqueduct, I should say, with the canal boats on. I've been to that one.
Well, there's another aqueduct also at Chirk.
Okay.
The railway viaduct goes across the valley parallel with the canal aqueduct. So, for someone like me who likes railways and love canals, this was a pretty good choice for this lady to recommend me. But I tell you what, I talked to while I was writing the book, I talked to a lot of staff on Merseyrail, and they were unfailingly helpful. All they wanted to do was tell me things and point me in. "Oh, had you thought about taking a photograph here? Did you know that Hoylake Station is the best preserved station of its era in the country?" And lots of things that were points of view, but often really good information that I used when I was writing the book. The staff were absolutely amazing, and I never met anybody who didn't want to help me. In fact, you know, most of them were going out of their way to tell me things, and apologize when they had to stop at a station and let people off. I thought, well, you know, you got to do your job first.
So in writing it, you must have had like an initial outlook on what you were going to do. But as you come across all these staff and different people and things like that, did it totally change your outlook on it, or did it totally change you and take you into a different direction of where you're going to write, or did it add stories to you, unexpected quirks along the way?
Yeah, the plan was always going to be to do each railway and illustrate it in the order in which they were built. So we started off with the Birkenhead to Chester line, and went through all the other lines sequentially. But what added colour to it, and this is often just a line in a caption, is some piece of information that, you know, as a regular traveller for many years, I didn't know, my family didn't seem to know, and I hadn't read about in books. So where I got little pieces of information like that, I tended to include it. So I didn't really change the strategy of the book, because my publishers wanted a synopsis of what I was going to do. And I obviously, once they put that to their board and approved it for publication, I then really was committed to doing it in that way. What I got was the freedom to interpret that as I wished.
In your research in that, did you find similar to the was it the Metropolitan line in London, where they built a line out into the countryside, and therefore housing and things like that were built around the railway? Did things like that happen on the peninsula? Because you said earlier that it was quite rural, and there's so many stations and lines that because there was a station nearby, one I can think of possibly would be likes of Liso station or something like that, where at the time there would have been nothing there. But obviously since then, there's a lot more modern housing that's come up there. And that's, of course, draws in everybody from those areas.
A lot of communities develop. If you take Heswall started developing when the line from Hooton arrived, and people suddenly realised that here was a much quicker way of getting to. It took a long while to get from Heswall to Liverpool, but once the railway opened, and especially when you could go underneath the Mersey, suddenly it became an easy journey. But in those days, of course, that was the old Heswall line initially, the steam line that went from Hooton to West Kirby. Then Heswall was blessed with a second station, which is the one we have now. I think originally the station was called Heswall Heights and the other one was called Heswall. But now, of course, we've just got the one station at Heswall. But so all of a sudden, travelling by train certainly made all these communities. And I think I mentioned earlier the ribbon alongside the line from Chester to Birkenhead. Certainly all these towns expanded. I think Hoylake particularly, and they became, of course, very popular resorts. New Brighton that expanded as a result of the railway arriving. So your point is absolutely right.
Yeah, they'll build it and they will come type of thing. That's right. I mean, even down on the other side. So what was going to bring up before? So obviously, passenger services is what really brought, most of the success of all the lines. Was initially it was more for freight, with all the industry along that side. With the likes of the docks. I know the docks in the steel industry may have used the mid-Wirral line, but the other industries down the coast or down the other side, say Port Sunlight and things like that. And how much did the freight industry either contribute, or was that a reason for it to be built in the first place? To get freight and soap and things like that from Port Sunlight.
Originally, the line was built for both passenger and freight. They saw an opportunity for both. There was an awful lot of freight came up on the Bidston line. And in fact, where Bidston station is now, there used to be extensive sidings and also a locomotive depot with locomotives stored there and serviced there. Now that was nearly all freight. The last freights were the ones going to the shot and steel works, and they were running in the 1960s and 70s, and they were taking an awful lot of freight. But the freight has disappeared basically. Birkenhead is still an important steel place, but it doesn't generate the freight traffic it used to. An interesting one that I've illustrated in the book, there is a picture here of a locomotive standing at Buxton. And what's the point of that to do with the Wirral, you may ask? And it's a fair question. But the answer is this locomotive was based at Birkenhead. And in the 60s, there were huge amounts of lime brought up from the Peak District, moved across to Birkenhead and then exported. So, in those days, there was still, and we're talking here 65, 66, there was still an awful lot of freight work going on, but it disappeared, as in so many parts of the country. The freight disappeared, the passenger traffic became more important, and that's the situation we have today. You don't get very many locomotive hauled trains on the Wirral. Sometimes you get engineering trains, and enthusiasts like me will turn out in force to see them, because it's quite a rare thing these days to see a locomotive. It looks quite strange when you're so used to seeing 3-car, 4-car, multiple unit trains running around in a particular area, and all of a sudden a locomotive comes by with a load of engineering material. It's quite something. But at one stage, Birkenhead North did have a couple of Southern Region electro diesels as shunters there, and that was we illustrate that again in the book, and that was in the I think that was in the 80s. There have been odd trains, there still are. You have to keep your eyes open and have a look on the enthusiast channels. Of course, the internet these days means that people know what's going on. There's a great site which tells you every train that's coming up, and you just go on it and you can have a look, and bingo, it'll tell you what trains are running and exactly what their times are. So occasionally, if one of those crops up, you'll see me hot-footing over to the Wirral, and I'll be standing on a platform with a whole load of other people just like me with cameras.
Yeah, I mean, every so often I tend to miss them, I must admit, but every so often, because I live next to the Bidston line, I hear that sort of diesel, what's it called? What do they call it? The diesel noise, or the
the grumble, the rumble,
the grumble and rumble, and I'm like, hang on a minute, what's that? And it's sort of like they call it thrash, don't they?
Yeah,
diesel thrash, and they can hear that going past, and I'm thinking, oh, hang on a minute, right? And that must be a lot of so they're the old 507s were taken off the network via Bidston and down past there, pulled by a big diesel.
Yeah,
so I heard them fairly regular. And any kind of new, if they're doing any ballasting or new track or things like that, a lot of that comes up the Bidston line, with ballast trucks and things like that, and they go through Bidston station, and then I don't know how often they reballast the lines or anything like that, but whenever that happens, that's where they come from, usually done at night. So it's already dark, and then you hear this thrash of a diesel engine going past, and you think, oh, they're doing some work overnight or something.
I do. You see these trains on a Sunday. If anybody's interested, the name of the website where you can find all this information, real-time feed from Network Rail, it's called Real-Time Trains. Real-Time Trains. If you just go into Real-Time Trains, it tells you every movement of every train in the country. So if you put in like Bidston, you'd be able to see every train during the day, even if it's 1 minute late. It says it's there. So it's a useful website, Real-Time Trains. Yeah,
it's a good one to see. Yeah, I'll tell you another place. I don't know if anything's covered in it that you've covered. That's kind of like off the Wirral line. Is at Port Sunlight, and there was an extensive railway in Port Sunlight.
Yeah,
not in the village, but in the factory. In fact, I know I used to work in the factory, and what they had at one point, way before I worked there, that there was no walking above surface.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It was railway lines everywhere. And it wasn't just like miniature railway, it was full-size railways everywhere. And as a result, there's actually a lot of tunnels underneath of Port Sunlight, linking buildings to buildings. And they're just like walking tunnels that people walked on to get from one building to the other, because they couldn't walk across land on the top, if you like, because there were all railways there. And that all connected up to Port Sunlight Station, which was 4 tracks at the time.
Yes, it was.
When it used to have station platforms on the outer 2. So it was 4 tracks, but it used to connect up there, and then they'd take the trains. That's right, yeah. And then they'd take the trains down, usually down towards Chester, I'd imagine. But that's another thing that's lost from rail onto road, because now all the pallets of they make comfort and those tablets. Last I knew, so they go out in pallets in the back of trucks now rather than on trains. And of course, British Steel, that used to be by Bidston, which is now a Tesco, that's where all those sidings were that you were talking about before.
Well, and there was a link line there down to Rock Ferry, a freight line.
That's right. Well, you could go right the way through Birkenhead docks, down what was called Beaumont Road, down Corporation Road, and then it linked underneath Birkenhead itself, of which the cuttings are still there, into a disused station, which was Birkenhead Town Station. Yeah. And then it linked up, and the next one was Rock Ferry.
Well, Birkenhead Town is shown in the book. Can I just show you a couple of pictures that I like?
Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah.
Look at this one from the library. I mean, imagine that thing. What stately locomotives marching across to West Kirby. That's a train that you'd really like to be on, isn't it? And the splendid fellows in front of it. Look, they look so proud of their locomotive.
Yeah.
So I love that picture. Thank you very much indeed for letting me have it. Birkenhead Reference Library. I really appreciate it. And then the other one, I like this one. I took. I don't know whether you can see that very well, but it's a changeover train. On one side, we've got the normal 503 on its way to West Kirby. On the other side, this is at Bidston. We've got the service from Wrexham. And in those days, they would be side by side. These days, of course, the Wales train creeps in quite apologetically, fills up with people, and it's gone because it uses the same lines, has to get out the way for the electric train. So I've always liked that, and the motorway in the background with no traffic on it.
Yeah. Nowadays, you kind of sneak in, get everyone off, and then run off.
Yeah, it's a quick turnaround.
Before the big train comes along, and
that's right. Yeah. It's no question who's got priority at Bidston Station.
Nah. So what do you think of the new trains then?
Well, they of course have their teething troubles. In fact, one of the ones I show in the book is the train being rescued. But they seem to have settled down now. They're very quiet. They're smooth. They give a good ride. They are sadly built in Spain. But so many new trains in Britain are. I don't understand why we can't build trains anymore. But they seem to have settled down to give a good service. I've travelled on them a lot, and you have to admit that there's progress being made, but they don't have much character. I'd say that. But of course, if you're operating the trains, you're not caring about character.
Yeah, they don't want people will argue though. I mean, maybe when the 507s came out, people said, "Oh, they're nothing like the old ones." Yeah. And then when these ones, get packed up in 40 years or maybe less, you never know. Then they'll say, "Oh, we want the old trains back again." It's a bit like going from Windows 7 to Windows 10 to Windows 11. Everyone wants the old one and not the new one. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as I know, the teething troubles initially that they had, and I mean, technologically, the much a lot more space inside because it's like
Yeah.
one continuous. You can walk from the front to the back, very airy.
Yeah.
There's the facilities on board. Still no toilets, but there you go. There's facilities on board. You can see what time you're going to get to your station by looking at the information board. The doors, although we must have been one of the only places in the country that you didn't have to open the doors yourself.
That's
beforehand.
right.
Now we have to open the doors, which is very inconvenient. But then I like the way that the little ledge comes out underneath. So
yeah, I think that's quite neat.
Yeah, so there's no step, there's no mind the gap or anything like that. But the seats are, though, very
they're hard, aren't they?
firm, aren't they? Yeah.
You wouldn't want to travel any further than Chester on one of those seats.
No, I was just thinking, I think that's the furthest one, isn't it? Chester to Liverpool is probably the furthest journey you can do. But as commuters go, majority of people, I suppose, are going from, 5 stops outside of either Liverpool or Birkenhead or whatever, and they're not on it for that long. So
they've got fast acceleration, they're quiet, the ride is very nice, so they've got a lot of strength. But you'd expect it. Golly, it's 40 years since the last ones.
40 years,
I think you just said yourself, you better get used to them, because your track record is you'll have these for 40 years as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did way before COVID. We did one when it was the first. I don't know if you know the number of this one. It was the first of the new trains to arrive on Merseyrail tracks. And I may have used something like that, real-time trains or something like that, but I found out about it somehow. And it was about midnight, and I went over to Liverpool, and it came up from the line from Wavertree that went up to Liverpool docks, and then there's a point just before Wirral Road where they both come together, and there's a little junction there, and that's where it first came on to Merseyrail tracks. And I found this little car park at the back of an industrial estate, and I got it. It was pulled on by a diesel. So I got the first film of it coming onto Merseyrail tracks, coming off that diesel line onto the Merseyrail. It then stopped at Wirral Road. I jumped in the car, ran down to Wirral Road. As you can imagine, there was about 50 people there already, even though it was about midnight. And then it changed direction and ended up at Kirkdale Depot. And that was the first one to arrive there. But yeah, that's the first one, and it was 777003.
That's right. Now, I did see a picture of that in one of my enthusiast magazines, but the first one I saw was a couple of weeks after that, standing outside Birkenhead North Depot, and I thought, it looks like a tram. But when you actually get on it, it doesn't feel anything like a tram. Well, it's bright and airy like a tram, but I mean, it's a tram. It's a tram. So that's brilliant. I think that the railways on the Wirral are run well. Customer satisfaction's good. So I'm hoping, that the future for the next 40 years, if somebody comes to write a book like this in 2065, they'll have another great story to tell. I really hope so.
That's it. Well, railways bring stories, don't they, in one form or the other, whether it's from enthusiasts or just people traveling to see family or meeting up with friends or whatever. So every story is in a book. Speaking of a book, so where can people get your book from?
The usual sources. It's published by Amberley. It's $15.99, and it's available at Waterstones, Amazon, Amberley's own place. I did give the names of local booksellers. Hopefully some of them have taken it, but it's the usual booksellers, and if in doubt, I suppose Amazon will always have it in stock.
Do you know if it's any local bookstores on the Wirral Peninsula itself? Are there any bookstores around here?
I gave them the name of booksellers in Birkenhead and Liverpool, but I couldn't find ones in places like my wife used to actually work in a bookstore in West Kirby when she was young, but that's long ago. There aren't too many bookstores outside the main places like Chester, Birkenhead, and Liverpool. But they asked me where I recommend selling it, and I consulted my wife Jane, and we put down as many as we could. In the end, it's up to booksellers whether they actually stock the book or not.
To talk it, well, I mean, I'd recommend in Heswell there's a bookshop called Lingham's.
They were on my list.
Brilliant.
I hope they took it.
Now I can go in and have a check if you want, but I know for a fact that if anybody wanted it and went to Lingham's, then every time I've been into for some whatever book I've gone for, they've bought it in and ordered it in or wherever they get it from. So I would say if anyone went to Lingham's, they'd order it in for you. Yeah,
and also if you're visiting a heritage railway, they've nearly all got good bookshops, and you'll probably find it on the shelf of, whether it's the East Lancs Railway or somewhere like that, maybe the Llangollen Railway. You probably find a copy of it on the shelves there.
I don't know if Hadlow Road, if they sell any bits and pieces in a place there. I'm not sure if they do.
Last time I went there, we went and had actually absolutely brilliant morning coffee and cakes.
Yeah, they have pop-up cafes. They have once a month.
Proper cafe there. Yeah, I don't recall them having books.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
But I might be wrong.
Well, that's great. Well, it's been just over an hour, so that's a good time to bring it into an end. But yeah, it's one thing that enthusiasts can definitely get from this is all the stories that you're providing from it. The from beginning to end of how it got to where it was, which is a good way of putting it, in a linear fashion. From this is where it started, and it's all branched from there. Yeah. And of course the pictures. So there's pictures in the book, which are all available to just download from the internet, from Google search and things like that. So there's lots to be seen. Just if people just wanted the pictures, there's pictures in the books and they wanted to look at the pictures. They're not available on the internet. They're only available in the book.
I've tried to put a lot of information in the captions so that, notice in the background here are a load of sidings that have now gone or whatever. Yeah. I've done what I possibly can.
What I also done, I'd put some links on the screen as well, but there'll be a link to the book in the description of the video on YouTube. So anyone can click on that link and find it from there. But in the meantime, thanks for coming on, and we can catch up at some point in the future. If there was any update or anything like that, or anything else that you wanted to add, we could do an update at some point.
I look forward to that, Andy, and thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.